Ainz in Equestria, written by Zakin. The guest of honor arrives in the streets. The Princess of Friendship had seen the deep sadness that overwhelmed the ponies as they exchanged glances with her as she was transported to the castle in her cage. All she could do was look away, but the worst moment was when they entered to the throne room. Inside, everything was ratty. In the center of the room a four-pointed pattern had been engraved on the floor. This was formed by a coneflower shape with four petals at 90 degrees each with respect to the other. A circle inside that crossed the petals at a third of the outermost part. All the formation was made by circular patterns. To engrave it, the carpet of that section had been torn off. The lines of the pattern were formed by a multitude of runes constantly repeated. It was a magical formula. At the tips of each petal that were outside the central circle, the petrified princesses had been placed, leaving the darky on the side of the throne, while the cadence had been placed on the side of the door, on the left petal from the entrance. The Princess of Love had a face of fear. Her wings were wide open, her face was turned to the side, her hind legs were bent as if she were going to get up on them to start hitting the front with the front hooves, and of these, one was flexed as if she were in mid-step. Luna had a face of surprise and concern. Her limbs were extended as if she were in mid-step during a race. Her wings were fully extended. They were at the highest point of a flap. Finally, Celestia, she had a pose as if she had been scared. She was standing on her back hooves while hitting the air with her front hooves, her wings spread and her face looking down, with a countenance that had hardly ever graced her face, fear. It was not until they placed the Princess of Friendship in her rightful place in the formation, that she was able to find her voice again. Tempest, you don't have to do this, don't give the Storm King magic. The unicorn interrupted. Ooh, don't tell me you wanted to keep it all to yourself. No, 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 bad filly, it's time to share. The commander finished mockingly and then spoke with a severe tone. I would love for everyone to know what I can become. Ooh, fascinating, said a playful voice that came from the door of the main terrace of the castle, surprising both, which became more serious immediately. Tell me, what can you do by yourself? The figure entered the room, becoming visible. In the doorframe an ape-like creature was standing. It was standing upright. Its body was covered by somewhat long white hair. All its visible skin was of a grayish color. The armor he used consisted of complete grabus made of plates that covered his legs and reached the first joint after the ankle. These had a shape similar to those of a feline. He used metal wristbands. His chest, back and shoulders were covered by an armor of semi-complete plates, while on its head was a helmet that resembled a crown with double horns, two long and curved upwards that gave a similarity to those of a longhorn bull, and two small ones in the center, vertical and slightly curved outward. His mouth was full of sharp teeth and his lower fangs fully protruded over his upper lip, escaping from his protruding jaw. Despite all this, the most distinctive thing about his face were his eyes. The sclera was light blue, slightly dark, and it had to bend down to cross the entrance that Celestia normally crossed without problems, this in order not to knock down this crown. It was no one other than the Storm King himself. Obey all your orders and will, of course, ho. Great mighty one. Grubber replied hurriedly, as he prostrated himself just behind Tempest, while she turned and stood firm to receive the king. At this time, when the commander's aide lifted the king's boots, from multiple places on the ceiling, a small amount of dust fell. In many places, a pattern of 8 holes was formed that were barely noticeable. After a moment, the captain's aide noticed the atmosphere in the place, and with an embarrassed smile, he got up and hurriedly left the room, at which the commander only rolled her eyes and slightly shook her head at the sides before turning our attention back to the king. That's good, it sounds great. The Storm King approached the cage of the Alicorn and, bringing his face closer, asked, And you, who are you supposed to be? I am the Princess of Friendship. Twilight answered with a serious tone. Wahaha, what things. How cute. The king mocked and accentuated his mockery by pretending to wipe a tear from his eyes. Immediately afterward, he became serious and directed his gaze to the commander. And why is it still moving? Asked, clenching his jaw a little. She and her friends resisted a bit, but now she's alone. It won't be a problem. How yeah, well, let's talk about problems, said the ape as he walked to the center of the circle. As he passed by the side of the commander, the Storm King, he passed his left hand through the commander's mane, stirring it a little, to which Tempest, who was barely reaching his waist, despite being taller than the average pony, only showed some annoyance on her face. This place is very, I don't know, it's something like very, cute. I've never liked cute things. That doesn't go with my style of powerful, magical, big and cruel type. During most of the monologue of the Storm King, the commander maintained a clear expression of really? with her eyes half closed, her brows slightly furrowed, and her lips in a completely straight line. "Are you going to tell me the punchline, Tempest? Because this seems to me like a joke," said the king angrily. When the last word was coming out of his mouth, he took with both hands the simple-looking scepter that he had been holding up to now in his right hand, raised it, and without any consideration struck the butt to the center of the engraving in the ground with all his might. MMNHHAAR clamped. The reaction was instantaneous. When the dark wood with its petrified appearance was nailed into the ground, it released a magical pulse that started from the point of contact. The runes that formed the engraving on the floor began to illuminate starting from the center until all the engraving lit up. When the brightness reached where the princesses were, the energy was much more visible. Small electric arcs began to be visible between the ground and the princesses. Huh. Ah. Then over the PTRIFIED princesses began to form veins of light that rose from their hoods on the ground, towards their heads, causing their horns and eyes to shine without being able to do anything to prevent it. GGGAAHH. No, no. Being the only one who was not petrified, Twilight was the only one capable of expressing the pain caused by her magic being stolen. When her eyes shone like those of the others, a beam of energy shot from the horns of all the princesses towards the part top of the scepter, in which was an elongated crystal of light cyan color, which was embedded between two ends of the wood that seemed to unscrew to reveal it. Each princess emitted a bright beam, almost white of light, but with a colored shadow, each one different. They all had a similar tint to the aura of their magic. But the drainage did not seem to be limited to them. Behind each one formed strips of undulating color vapor, which were thin next to them and thickened as they moved away. Ha, ha, look at this. A light show. When the draining was over, the Storm King once again separated the scepter from the ground and it was covered for a moment in electric arcs. WGGHA, ha ha ha, let's get the storm started. Oh, that was good. Maybe I should add it to my trademark. He said the second part in a low voice, just to himself. After the draining was complete, Princess Twilight's eyes had lost a good deal of life and color. Hell, now, let's see what this thing can do. The forced extraction of magic left the purple alicorn exhausted, practically immobile, so she simply collapsed. Plof and an HNNGHU, and when she hit the bottom of the cage, the groan that escaped from her mouth caught the king's attention. Ah, I have an idea. The ape's face was adorned with a sadistic smile. He squeezed the hand with which he held the scepter, causing electric arcs to arise between the points and the gems, and he turned to the cage behind him. Everyone outside the castle heard a big explosion, and those who were closer could see its origin. The wall with stained glass windows that led to the main terrace now had a large hole. A large amount of debris was scattered everywhere, in addition to multiple pieces of a blackish metal, and among all the pieces of it the Princess Twilight was immobile. Her fur had scorched parts, she was missing some feathers, her mane and tail were a disaster. She also had many small cuts all over the body that had been caused by the metal shavings coming from the cage, but she was still breathing. Everything hurt, but nothing was broken. She only groaned while rolling across the terrace, bleeding the inertia imparted by the attack. Ha ha ha. Not bad, in fact, almost first class, said the Storm King, standing where the wall had been before, the commander following behind him. Your Excellency, you promised to fix my horn, and now, tada, wait a minute. The Storm King silenced Tempest while waving his hand in a denial movement in front of the unicorn's face. Then he advanced. Seeing him approach, Twilight covered herself as best she could to defend herself from another attack, but it did not come. He simply took a step over her. When she heard him walk away, she opened her eyes and looked at the horn-broken unicorn. The princess's expression was clear. She asked, "Are you still sure what you're doing?" To which the commander simply looked away uncertainly. Let's see, what else can this thing do? He squeezed his hands on the scepter and moved it slightly. The light around him changed. This made him look up to see in the direction of the sun that was visible in the distance. Then he moved his hands again without taking his eyes off the horizon, and a satisfied smile spread across his face. This is not possible. I can move the sun. Ha ha ha. Was this what I was talking about? Now, let's play ha ha. Day, night, morning, afternoon, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, ha ha ha. While the king was celebrating his new power, a huge 8-story cake was arriving from the upper-class district, with a dragon-shaped candle lit on top. Whoever was transporting it was being detained on the access bridge to the nearest grounds to the castle. Okay guys, I get it, it's your job, but I have exact instructions to deliver this cake of. Looks at a clipboard with a sheet in its claws. Congratulations on conquering Equestria and winning powerful magic to someone named Storm King inside the castle as soon as possible. If I remember correctly, my boss told me something like if he does not receive his cake as soon as possible he will turn out really explosive shit. But hey, the problem will not be mine. I complied, incoming and trying to deliver it. The feline with a creamy brown fur turned around and walked towards the cake that was on a platform with wheels. This was pulled by 5 mares. When he was in front of them he made a sign on his chest with his right paw. He had the digits extended and began to lower them one by one slowly in the countdown. When his count reached 0, the guards cleared the way and the Abyssinian winked at the mares in front of him. It goes without saying that the feline in the apron and chef's hat was no one else than Caperdapperpors, and the mares pulling the base were the M6s that were disguised with chains and muzzles as if they were prisoners. They had already reached the halfway point to their objective when the assistant of the commander came out sniffing the air from behind a pie stall. MMMH, cake, he said, almost salivating. He hurried to catch up with his target, leaping up to the back of the platform, and immediately grabbed a handful of the cake and ate it. MMMHM, delicious, huh? Oh, who the hell puts eyes on the filling of a cake? Then the eye inside the cake blinked, processing what this meant. Grubber realized what was happening and raised the alarm, but was immediately silenced by a hand pulling him into the cake. Wah, intruders. Splop, that's it, it's showtime. Screen dash, Machine Pegasus hit at the platform with one of his rear hooves, and in an explosion of frost and cake, the pirate crew and Captain Clando came out ready for battle. The surprise did not last long, just a few seconds, immediately after the fight broke out. The combat was fierce and quite close, at least for the Equestrians. A certain group of invisible creatures were having a great time. They even competed among themselves to see who could neutralize the Storm King soldiers in the most creative way. But they did this not out of simply boredom. The reason why half of the EEA that were assigned to Canterlit were knocking out guerrillas was to carry out the orders of their superior. The guardian of the 7th floor had ordered them not to let the mares face the full thickness of the forces that were in Canterlit, otherwise they would end up seriously injured or killed, and that was not within their master's plans. It was necessary that they could reach the castle, or they could not fulfill their role in his master's plans. That was the real reason for their presence. It had nothing to do with boredom and much less with the fact that they had agreed that the one with the fewest numbers would have to watch the assistant butler Hitler for 72 hours while they were inside Nazareth. It was definitely not because of that. The M6s had been worried, but the fight was turning in their favor. It seemed that the soldiers were concentrated in the lower part of the city, and they had already reached the main balcony. The commotion in the castle courtyard drew the attention of those who were on the balcony. The Storm King contemptuously viewed the combat. Tempest was incredulous. How? But that's impossible. While Twilight regained hope. They are my friends. But before the moment took hold, the Storm King spoiled it. Yeah. It's wonderful. It's the magic of friendship. He said with a squeaky and mocking voice. Bleeg, it's about time for a good storm. Ha. Pointing the scepter to the sky, he generated a huge bolt of lightning from the crystal at the tip, while laughing threateningly. After a few seconds, when the lightning finished its discharge, a furious wind began to be felt. It was the beginning of a gigantic tornado that was gaining strength quickly in it as it centered the terrace of the castle. In the main square, when the wind started, the group of M6s immediately sought shelter, barely managing to get to the safety of an alley. When they were safe, they could observe how the wind dragged stalls and guerrillas alike. There's no way we're going to get through that. We would all have to be much faster than the average Pegasus, said Rainbow. Hearing her, an idea appeared in Pinky's mind, who took a helmet out of nowhere and putting it on, congratulated the speedster, saying, "Excellent idea, excellent idea," while she kept a smile on her face that was unusual for her, one of which a certain red-haired mate would be very proud, that if she had not been turning her back on the rest, they would all have felt intimidated. On her face, there was a smile that was an equal part sadistic and aggressive. Ha, now I truly am the Storm King, now the whole world will bow to me. Boom baby. Ha. The Storm King was enjoying his new power a lot. Seeing him in a good mood, Tempest decided to get closer and make their deal effective. Yes, Your Highness, you are all powerful, just as I promised. There is no one with more power than you. The commander was forced to raise her voice somewhat due to strong winds, but she did not care. Her greatest desire was within her reach. She prostrated herself and continued speaking. Now I ask you to fulfill your end of the bargain, restore my horn, and I will swear to you my magic and myself, putting both at your service." But the words she heard in response chilled her. "Ha, who cares about your pathetic magic when I have all this power?" But we had an agreement." She refused to believe it, which was normal. Those words shattered the only hope of fulfilling her dream. But what followed? "I take those pieces and incinerate them." "An agreement? Ha, go away unheard. I was playing with you. I was using you. That's what I do. I never intended to honor those words." The Storm King was about to attack Tempest with the magic of the scepter, but the storm was raging and lightning struck the terrace right between them, stunning them, turning them away at the other into the ground. It was a perfect opportunity to snatch the scepter from the king, but the commander got too close to the edge and the strong wind began to drag her away. The unicorn regained consciousness when she felt herself float, and as she passed near the railing she clung to it with a hoop with all her might, but the wind was too strong. Seeing this, the Princess of Friendship knew she had no time to lose. She had to choose. Fortunately, the choice was easy. Tempest could not take it anymore. She was sure that this was her end. She closed her eyes full of bitterness and disappointment. Not only had she not achieved her wish, but she had proven beyond any doubt that no one could be trusted. Just as this thought crossed her mind, her hoof lost contact with the railing, but the sensation of a pair of hooves clinging to hers made her eyes widen in surprise. But the biggest surprise was whose those hooves belonged to. Her surprise was such that only one sentence could come out of her mouth at that moment. "Why?" "Because that's what a true friend does," the princess replied as she pulled the unicorn to safety. This gave the king time to shake off his daze and stand up. "Ha ha ha, how cute, friendship is magic." "Yes, of course, how? You just missed the opportunity to snatch the scepter from me, now until never." Meanwhile, in the plaza, the crew members don't think this was a good idea, and they try to discourage the mares one last time. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" the pirate first officer shouted with concern, while the cook, a boatswain, they were around a big contraption. They had already finished preparing everything, and now the first officer was holding an electric detonator. Said detonator was the trigger of a huge cannon, but not it was any weapon of war. It was the Cape Cannon Pinky had prepared for the event. "Just do it." The party pony yelled back with security from inside the cannon, and she was not alone. With her were the rest of the elements, and little Spike squeezed into the cannon. "I think I'm starting to get second thoughts on this idea, dear." The dressmaker spoke somewhat concerned, a feeling that Applejack shared. "I agree with her." At DJ, the response that their concerns received was not what they expected. Fire. Kapow. Being ejected from the cannon by the explosion, they all screamed as they soared through the sky, getting closer and closer to their target while forming a circle around Pinky in the air. Normally this formation should not have remained, but with the fear, the mares completely ignored the shadows that formed from time to time on their bodies. The only one who did not scream in fear was the party pony, which is why the shadow demons left her in the center of the formation. After a few seconds of flight, the vision of the group began to clear. They were passing the perimeter of the tornado. They could see the terrace, Tempest, Twilight, and the Storm King, with whom they were about to crash. Unfortunately for them, they were not in silence. He was about to shoot a great lightning bolt at the mares that were on the terrace floor, but a scream that increased in volume quickly made him turn around, barely managing to evade the collision with 5 mares and a dragon that came flying. Tut, 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 tut. As he moved out of the way, the newcomers fell on the two who were on the ground, all rolling together and causing screams of surprise, followed by groans of pain from the impact. "Wow, I don't think I hit the mark," spoke Pinkie Pie among the pile of ponies. Badass and trust they could have continued to complain or have gotten up to fight against the Storm King, but a chilling sensation caused everyone to pay immediate attention to the dark circle that formed in the air. Even though that Princess of Friendship already knew this sensation, she was stunned. Feeling it first hoof-and at such close distance was overwhelming. So enormous was the amount of magic that the circle projected that even the Pegasus and the Earth ponies could feel it. Seeing their expressions, the Storm King decided to rejoice in their success, without realize what was behind him. "I see that you finally realize my greatness. That's why I'm the king and you are nothing. And since you bother me, I'm going to eliminate you." With no distance limits and with a transfer failure rate of 0%, this was the most accurate teleportation spell. Gate, noting that teleportation magic was not obstructed by anything, Ainz sighed with relief. Being captured, and instead of saving someone, it would have been the worst outcome. "Clang, I'm afraid if you did it, it would be quite troublesome." Hearing the new voice behind him, the king realized that he was not the one everyone was staring at with horror. When he turned around, what he found behind was something he had never seen before. What was behind him was a skeleton of an unknown race dressed in robes of excellent quality. In his right hand was a golden staff that turned crystalline towards the hilt. This emanated a feeling of power. Behind the skeleton, there was a black ellipse that looked more like a hole in reality, with a slight reddish tint turning inside it. When he turned around, he saw a third figure come out of the ellipse. This one was wearing a kind of maid uniform. It had its red and long hair tied in two thick braids. Twilight couldn't believe what she was seeing. It can't be a human. As she saw the maid leave the portal, the words escaped her mouth like a whisper, almost breathless, so low that no one else could hear it because of the ambient noise, not even the newcomers. The other creature that was already standing to the left of the skeleton wore a full body armor in black, and judging by its figure similar to that of a minotaur, it was probably a female. The battle axe in its right hand had a slight greenish glow covering the edge. "Just who the hell are you? Get out of here before I turn you to dust." These words proved to be the worst possible choice for the Storm King, because as soon as he finished speaking, the maid disappeared and reappeared next to him. An instant later, the castle wall that overlooked the terrace had a new hole that was created by the king, and where the latter had been standing now was only the maid with one arm extended in that direction with her hand extended. What exclamation mark! A reaction of absolute surprise was the only option of the equestrians present, with the exception of Fluttershy. She fainted as soon as she felt the terrifying amount of magic that the portal was projecting. "Who Ooal? No, who are ye?" And she was trying to sound respectful. The Princess of Friendship was about to say who you are instead of who are thou, but when she saw the creature in armor, something told her that it would be a bad choice. Before she received a response from any of them, the maid again took a neutral position and walked until she was further back than the armored figure. Horn, wings, and lavender, you must be the Princess of Friendship, am I correct?" The rather feminine and dismissive voice said from within the black armor. "How do these things know who I am?" Twilight was desperately thinking of a possible explanation as she answered. "Why yeah, I mean yes. The W would be right, if why you don't mind can I ask, who are ye?" asked the alicorn, arming herself with all the courage she could, which was not much, rather just enough. Right, introductions, but this climate is not the most suitable for chatting." With these words and without any action on his part beyond a massive expulsion of magic that the princess could feel coming from the skeleton, which almost made her faint, a moment later the storm began to subside very quickly. The clouds twisted, disappearing. There was even a cool spring breeze, despite being midsummer. All the mares and the dragon were again speechless. The change was even faster than when the king started the storm, and the change was not only about the castle, or Candlewood was affected. The sky as far as the eye could see was clear. The skeleton's deep and authoritative voice snapped them out of their trance, calling everyone's attention again and at the same time blocking the exclamation that Beth was about to spit out at full volume. "My name." In the past there was no one who did not recognize this name. Remember it well. The M6 spike and the commander felt insecure. The skeleton's words seemed to be reproachful. Of all, only Twilight noticed a specific inflection. Did he say in the past? That means he has existed in Equus for a long time, but that means that he precedes the non-story. No, calm down, keep listening, maybe you will have some time to lose your head later. Gloop, and hopefully not literally. "I am the Sorcerer King, Ainz." When he said his name, he spread his arms and the flames in their sockets became brighter. At this moment the figure before the ears seemed to be as gigantic as Mount Cantor itself. The pressure that his mere presence exuded was terrifying, and whoever succumbed this time was rarity. "Nonsense. I had never heard that name, even less the title," shouted from within the castle the Storm King, as he returned again to the terrace. Even when he seemed something beaten, with some cuts, the armor dented in multiple points, the most noticeable being in the center of the chest, and the crown on his head had lost one of his lateral horns. He could not be underestimated. This time he was not alone. The fact that the storm disappeared allowed the gorillas to enter the castle. With him there were at least 40 gorillas. "I've had enough of this bullshit. Maybe your warrior is strong, but she won't be able to beat the numbers." He was about to order the attack when a deep laugh interrupted his thoughts. "Warrior? Who was the one who was truly talking nonsense? My servant is not a warrior, but if you have so much interest in knowing the strength of the warrior, Elda, as you order, Ainz-sama." The voice that came out of the black armor, in stark contrast to her appearance, was elegant. Upon receiving the order from her master, the female in armor placed herself at the front of her group. Attack. With the instruction given, all the soldiers swiftly advanced to attack the armored creature, quickly closing the distance between both sides. Both Twilight and Tempest expected it to be a one-sided beating by the guerrillas, or at least a very intense battle. In fact, they could have more easily accepted any other outcome, except the one that happened in front of their eyes. The creature raised its massive war axe with just one hand, and with a single lateral movement, it snapped the 14 closest guerrillas in half in a horizontal line, while the air pressure caused by the excessively fast movement knocked the rest by throwing them over the edge of the terrace. Seeing the corpses, the Equestrians wanted to vomit, but managed to hold on, at least until they heard the thrown soldiers hit the ground. Splat, crunch, crack, splat, splat, crunch. Hearing them, Spike, Twilight, and Pinky immediately threw up. I'm surrounded by inept servants. This will take care of you right away, haha. From his hip he took a crystalline orb with a slight green glow that came from the crystal sealed inside. It was emerald obsidian, the same thing that the commander had used against the princesses. The king threw it with all his might towards the skeleton. The orb hit him squarely on the ribs and a cloud of green smoke spread immediately, covering the overlord almost completely. I thought you were a buffoon, but it seems that you are more of an idiot. You are trying to petrify the meat of something that does not have it. A true stupidity. Ainz simply waved his left hand and with it dissipated the cloud around him harmlessly. He was intact. I'll crush you personally. Both of you, back off, Ainz said in a low voice. Yes, the Storm King threw a concentrated magic beam, intending to destroy the skeleton. The shot was accurate. The king smiled from ear to ear. No one is capable of surviving something like this, he was sure of it. But a sinister laugh made him stop the attack. So this is taking damage. Is this what pain feels like? Everyone was surprised. Who gave voice to the general feeling was the attacker himself. That's impossible. That amount of magic would have leveled any mountain. But then a chilling sensation invaded everyone present. The armored creature was trembling slightly and its fists were clenched tightly. You. Damn scum. That an inferior worm has dared to cause pain to Ainz-sama. To the one that I love so much, you, cursed trash, you should know your platonic. Everything seemed to indicate that she was about to attack the Storm King, but when a skeletal hand rested on the armored female's shoulder, she suddenly calmed down. Calm down, Elba. But, Ainz-sama. Don't worry, everything is going according to plan, even though it turned out to be much weaker than expected. Well then, I already checked everything I wanted to check, so we can end this farce now. You see, Ainz disappeared from everyone's sight and a thousandth of a second later he was in front of the surprised Storm King. With his left hand he took his head, squeezing it until the crown shattered, and after releasing his staff, that instead of falling he stayed floating where he dropped it. His right hand crushed the wrist of the Storm King, causing him to drop Zakana's scepter, getting a wrenching scream as the king's mind finally registered the pain, while the scepter simply echoed on the ground as it fell. Your kingdom now belongs to me. Your power never existed. After all, you have many slaves, but you betrayed your only subordinate. For me you are repulsive, but I assure you that you will pay for your crimes against my kingdom. I assure you that your life will never be taken away. Your only cause of death will be old age paralysis. Suddenly the Storm King stopped moving completely. The arm that had been hitting the skeleton until now hung inert. The king was simply thrown aside, like a rag doll. Elba, make sure he's sent back. I'm sure that Nrandist would love to have a new voice for his choir. It will be done as ordered. I am sure she will appreciate your gift. After those words, the armored figure now known as Elba put 2 fingers to the side of his head. Immediately after another hole opened in reality through which the Storm King was simply kicked and immediately afterward closed. Once it was free, the Sorcerer King took his staff again. He simply opened his hand, and it immediately floated to it. The mage picked up the scepter and kneeled in front of him presenting it. The skeleton extended his hand over it, and it got covered with a soft greenish glow. Ha, I see, definitely useless, but interesting. Well, now, let's continue where we were. The attention of the 3 creatures was back on the Equestrians. Look, they all gulped nervously, got to their feet, and got ready to run if necessary. AJ placed Rarity on his back, while Pinky carried Fluttershy. Commander Tempest Shadow. What? How come the thing knows my name? I'm not as well known as the princesses. Why yes. "It is yes, your highness, insignificant worm, show all due respect," the female in armor said, with an aggressive tone, but her words stopped as soon as the skeleton raised one of its hands, signaling it to stop. "It's okay, Elda. She hasn't confirmed anything yet. She doesn't have to address me with a title, yet. As you can see, Tempest, there is just a succession to the throne, and I plan to make multiple changes. In the first instance, there will be big changes in the military structure, but it would be monumental stupidity to dismiss a capable commander. You have two options, continue in office or leave it." Without intentionally doing so, Ainz paused when he was going to offer the second option, because he had not thought of anything other than letting her go, and since he could not think of anything, he continued speaking, but the tone of his voice was gloomy due to the annoyance he felt with himself. If those are my options, your majesty, I agree to continue in the post. Of course, I will continue in the post. Maybe I can escape if I am still alive, but if I quit, I am sure it will not be breathing. It's true, you are incomplete. That will be a problem to fill the position. The M6s who were conscious and even Spike all thought the same thing. How cruel, but for Tempest it was a low and heartless blow, to give him an option and then tear her to pieces. She was about to burst into tears, but the next words froze her the blood. "Lupus Regina, eliminate the problem. Right away, Ainz-sama." The maid walked until she was in front of the unicorn, who looked at her with terror eyes, crouched and with her ears flat on her skull. In the hands of the maid, there was something that was not there a moment ago, a scroll was standing in front of her. The maid tossed the scroll into the air in front of her and it burned into blue flames. Restore. When Tempest heard the maid speak, she immediately squeezed her eyes. Her whole body felt warm and she heard exclamations of surprise from the rest, but one, in particular, made her eyes widen. Princess Twilight did not understand what her eyes were seeing. How was it possible that the maid had dragon magic? Or was it not a message sent? But an instant later both doubts were eradicated. A slight green glow covered Tempest's body. After that the unthinkable happened, which caused the princess to scream without reservation. "What? That's impossible. Once lost the horn, it is impossible to fix it." It had not been a communication, if not a spell that is not supposed to exist. Not only did it remove all the scars from the unicorn, her horn was also completely repaired. Feeling the difference in her body, after the warm feeling disappeared, the unicorn sat down on the ground and her two front hooves rushed towards where there was nothing before. When her hooves felt the hooves, she couldn't hold back any longer and began to cry. "Sob, sob, sniff and my lord sniff," sobbed. Tempest began to speak with a trembling and cracking voice, but this time with happiness. "Why, you have fulfilled sniff my greatest wish, sniff without even it leaving my mouth." The unicorn got up to bow as deeply as she could and then began to speak. "Yours is all my gratitude and fidelity for the rest of my days, or until you see fit to get rid of me. I promise to serve you with all my heart and ability, and I also promise to do my best to carry out your orders no matter what they cost me." She took her oath of allegiance with her face practically pressed to the ground, which, although she was not aware of it, achieved a favorable impression of her before the overseer of the Guardians. "I accept your oath of allegiance and establish you as commander of the local troops as a provisional position. Your permanent position will be granted to you as soon as the army is completely restructured." "I listen and obey, your majesty." "Ainz Sama," said the unicorn, while at the last word she directed her gaze to the entourage of her new master to receive confirmation that she was using the correct words and obtained a confirmation assent from them. "You can get up." The overlord spoke and then directed his gaze to the rest of the Equestrian and continued speaking. "Now, if I remember correctly, a festival and reunion is pending, isn't there?" Princess Twilight